Really?
Yeah, well, she had just like signed a, petition or something. I guess she gave them her number.
So one of the questions that I have for you: when did you decide to grab the camera and turn it like? At what moment did you say, "Okay, my dad has turned into a curmudgeonly Archie Bunker character"? When did
Uh,
you decide to?
oh, well, I wish it was just the.
Because this isn't camera phones you pulled out. You pulled out the real deal. Pop, I'm getting the Super 8 on your behind.
A what?
The Super 8. I'm getting the big camera.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I had all kinds of cameras. I had my camera, which is a good three chip kind of camera. It was great. And then I had another DP who was really good. Actually, she used that camera too. We had a couple of those same cameras. Anyway, I love that camera, but yeah, I wish my dad had just turned into a curmudgeony Archie Bunker. He turned into more like Freddy Krueger. Um,
Yeah, because
uh,
Archie Bunker, despite everything, Archie Bunker was always still lovable in the family, and it seemed like,
yeah, and he didn't really like yell or foam at the mouth or have steam come out his ears or threaten to disown his kids or you know he was still he didn't really raise his voice. He
And
was
and one
scary.
and one thing we talk about on this show, and you definitely talk about it in your documentary, is that as jobs are moving out into the suburbs, as people are moving out into the suburbs, as commutes are getting longer, and especially with the end of the fairness doctrine, what we're seeing is a rise of talk radio. And a big reason for the rise of talk radio is it's just easier to sell ad time, right? And so you say that your dad is driving to work, and as he's driving to work, he's listening to maybe I don't think he was the first large syndicated talk show personality, but probably the most influential,
Mm.
Rush Limbaugh, and definitely fell in love with Rush Limbaugh.
Well,
Uh,
first he was listening to Bob Grant, and he was what they call the father of conservative radio. Um, and Rush Limbaugh hadn't gone national yet. Um, but and then my dad hadn't fully retired. He was part-time retired and had a long solo commute,
mhm.
and that's where he found talk radio and Bob Grant. It wasn't until he fully retired and went home that he found and fell in man love with Rush Limbaugh.
And I want to ask this question to the panel. I don't know if you guys feel the same way too. Um, that first advent of talk radio, um, for me, this is before there's 24-hour sports radio. So I'm a baseball fan, or was a really hardcore baseball fan as like a 9, 10-year-old. And in the Bay Area, after the Giants, San Francisco Giants played, they would play syndicated talk radio. So a lot of times I would get right wing voices post game. And so I would go to sleep listening to Rush Limbaugh. Um, and so it felt like news. It was just like listening to the news because I'd wake up in the morning with the radio still playing and it would be like the news show. So do you think that was a way, and I asked this to you and Andrew, if that's kind of how people get slowly hypnotized by, because like, well, I'm just listening to the news.
Yeah, yeah. I think what it is like with my dad, he didn't want to really listen to music. He always wanted to educate himself. He was really big on education. So he figured talk radio, he'd learn something. It was a little newsy and he thought he was bettering himself. So yeah, and 97% of talk radio is right wing across the country.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how come we have all these right wing nuts.
but I think there's something to be said for as and there's studies have shown as people get older, they're less attracted to listening to music in the car and more attracted to tapping into some sort of dialogue. I think that helps explain like the recent popularity of podcasts, and I certainly think that helps explain the popularity of someone like Rush Limbaugh. But I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh a lot when I was doing research for my book on the culture wars. I also listened a lot to Sean Hannity and Mark Levin and a few others.
Oh,
And here's the thing: Rush Limbaugh, especially in comparison to all the others, was extremely talented and very funny.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so there's just like really something to be said for the talent of Rush Limbaugh and being able to attract the type of audience and build the type of influence that he had. Um, and Yeah, I mean, he was a horrible, despicable right winger, and hopefully he's rotting in hell. But he was extremely good at what he did.
Yeah, he was. And what you said earlier about how as people get older, wanting to listen to a voice or talking, maybe that's even connected to not having that community at work if they're retired.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? So I lived with a family that wasn't my own for some time, and the dad loved watching these news programs, and the family was they were a white family, and or they're still alive, very much alive. Uh, and they watched a fair share of Fox News, but they also watched a fair share of Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart, which I thought was kind of funny because it would be a nice little balance of the two.
Now that's balance.
And the dad used to love watching Dan Rather. And wherever Dan Rather would go news-wise, because after he got kicked off network, then he was on some cable show for a while. I can't remember which one. And he loved watching kind of news exposés, because that actually is where a lot of real journalism comes from, because it's not the gossipy news of the now that everybody's so tied into what just happened, who said what via this social media app, and that kind of those bigger exposés where they take a lot of time and have to fly someone out somewhere. He loved those stories. He'd call me in the room. He's like, Jason, okay, no one's here yet, let's hang out and watch the news. And when you think about long form talk radio, 3-hour shows, it just feels like an indoctrination into an ideology, because it baits you with the idea that I'm listening to this on a news channel.
Yeah.
And this is just factual because they can't lie. Why would they? They're the news people. These aren't personalities.
Right.
And here we are some 40 years later almost. And that still seems to be in the back of people's minds as they listen to this kind of stuff. How do you feel about that, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, so when you listen to somebody like Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, the list goes on, they treat their audience like they're part of an insider club. And you feel like you have some sort of special knowledge, special wisdom that the rest of the world is missing. And so, like, some of the metaphors and analogies, Jen, that you used in the movie, from brainwashing to cult-like, there's something to that. And it's a powerful potion. It really is.
It is. I mean, and it's repetition. Repetition is a big part of brainwashing. And there's emotion and anger. And that's emotion and anger. That's that really plays into brainwashing as well. It changes the brain chemistry. They can activate the amygdala, where the cerebral cortex, where you do your rational thinking, is shut off, and then you're, in a fight or flight uh, state of mind, state of being.
Yeah,
Um,
there was something from your documentary about Fox News and about how they really sort of play up this 24/7 crisis mode that we're always in, and they have the tracker, and they speak loudly. I feel like Fox News has won in the sense that now this mode of news has been replicated. I feel like MSNBC and to some degree CNN do the same thing. The message is different, but the medium has now become a sort of like panic-stricken. I mean, the whole year in which MSNBC sort of focused on Trump and Russiagate, I felt like this was the flip side of Fox News, and it's really sort of like beating home the drums of panic, of fear. And I feel like all of that cable news now is a sort of like a form of elder abuse, because so much of the audience are the elderly, and it's whipping people up into a paranoid frenzy.
But don't you think, like with Fox, not news, I call it, they've been whipping people up into a frenzy over stuff that was made up, or that was exaggerated, or that was, skewed. Whereas I think by the time MSNBC and CNN started, there's cause for panic in my mind. Not panic.
Yeah, I guess so.
Panic,
So I would
yeah.
never in a million years say MSNBC and CNN are as bad as Fox News. Like, I'm not going there. But the exaggerations got really out of hand during the Trump administration, and there was this sort of like Trump derangement syndrome, I think, that really sort of fed into the ratings. And the very reason that I think one of the very reasons why Trump was able to sort of ascend as a politician was because he drove ratings for all of the media, all of the news networks, all of the media networks. And I just feel like the ultimate sort of representation or signal that Fox News won is that now that mode of quote unquote news presentation it defines all of our cable news media landscape. I find it extremely troubling.
Yeah, I do think though Fox puts it best.
Oh yeah.
There's no Janine Giroux, that I can think of on MSNBC. There's no Sean Hannity. There's no Tucker Carlson. They're like, I see what you're saying. But to me, they're like watered down versions. Fox, like Roger Ailes being behind Fox, he was a genius. He understood television, and he knew what drew people in, and what got people addicted. And you're so right about like CNN and Trump. Like how many free hours he got? Billions of dollars of free advertising from CNN. And remember what Les Moonves said? That he may not be good for the country, but he was damn good for the money.
Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe on your way out. You can catch the live stream of This Is Revolution every Tuesday through Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time and Saturday, 9 a.m. Pacific Time. This is Revolution.